Welcome to this explainer. Today we're going on a seriously fascinating journey into the architecture of extreme security. We're going to explore exactly how humanity has historically protected its most valuable assets, and how that very concept is radically changing right before our eyes. So grab your notepad because the evolution we're about to look at is nothing short of incredible.
So, what actually pops into your head when you hear the word vault? I'm guessing most of you are picturing a massive, heavy steel, circular door, maybe deep underground, guarded by armed security to keep out those cinematic bank robbers, right? Well, that's the Hollywood version. But today we need to completely challenge those preconceived notions.
So, the crucial point is this. A vault is not just a physical room. It's a comprehensive framework of trust. It's a system of layered security designed specifically to preserve humanity's most critical assets. Whether that asset happens to be a heavy bar of shiny metal, a fragile seed, or literally an invisible string of code. Okay, let's dive into this roadmap. We're going on an evolutionary journey across different types of wealth today, covering 5 quick phases. First, the anatomy of a vault. Second, guarding the gold standard. Third, preserving biological heritage. Fourth, the new digital vault. And finally, the future of trust.
Starting off with part 1, the anatomy of a vault.
The overarching theme in extreme security is a concept known as defense in depth. You don't just put up one giant wall and call it a day, right? Security relies on multiple overlapping layers that back each other up. If one fails, the next one holds. And the tools we use for these layers have vastly changed as what we consider valuable has shifted. Over the last century, we've moved from relying entirely on sheer physical mass and solid bedrock to utilizing the extremes of Mother Nature, and now to relying on invisible algorithmic code.
Which brings us to part 2, guarding the gold standard.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the staggering physical weight of what we're talking about here. Going back to the era of the physical heavyweights, where the primary threat was literally physical theft, we relied on sheer, unmovable mass. Take this number, 6,979 tons. That is the physical weight of the gold currently resting inside the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. I mean, just imagine the kind of structural engineering required to not just protect that much gold, but simply to keep it from sinking straight through the floor.
To hold that massive weight, architects York and Sawyer designed a building in 1924 that literally fights nature. They dug deep into Manhattan Island's impenetrable bedrock. This vault sits 80 feet below the bustling streets of New York and 50 feet below sea level. Its defense mechanism is essentially the geology of the Earth itself.
Hopping across the Atlantic, we hit another massive metric, 400,000 bars. This really illustrates the monumental scale of the gold reserves protected within the Bank of England's vault in London's financial district. And while they also use deep underground spaces, their approach to these security layers differs in a really fascinating way.
When we compare the two, the New York Fed leans heavily on structural mass, heavy limestone, and subterranean bedrock. It's security by sheer geology. Contrast that with the Bank of England, which introduces highly advanced technological barriers. We're talking biometric iris scans, multi-factor authentication, and time locks that completely disable access during off hours. It's very James Bond.
Let's move to and see how this builds in part 3, preserving biological heritage. We're shifting the narrative here away from protecting financial capital, because, well, what happens when the asset isn't a shiny metal, but existential biological wealth that humanity actually needs to survive? The Svalbard Global Seed Vault takes defense in depth to its absolute purest form. Just walk through this intrusion path with me for a second. Step 1, you have to somehow reach a remote island in the Arctic. Step 2, you face a natural permafrost shield. Step 3, you must navigate a 100-meter tunnel carved straight into the rock. And Step 4, you finally reach highly secure compartmentalized chambers. It is literal gauntlets of isolation.
And the magic number for this vault is -18 degrees Celsius. This specific target preservation temperature is absolutely crucial to keep the seeds viable for centuries. But the true brilliance of Svalbard is its fail-resilient philosophy. They use redundant refrigeration, sure, but if the power were to completely fail, the natural Arctic permafrost just steps in and maintains those freezing temperatures.
Where traditional vaults fight nature with deterrence and structural mass, Svalbard completely flips the script. Its entire goal is long-term survivability. So instead of fighting nature, It embraces extreme nature as its primary defensive weapon through passive thermal stability. It also replaces armed guards with shared international custody, using global governance as an actual security control.
All right, moving on to part 4, the new digital vault.
This brings us right up to the modern era. We've talked about heavy gold and frozen seeds, but how in the world do you go about locking up a digital asset or a cryptocurrency, something that literally has no physical form and you cannot even touch? Well, a new generation of wealth demands digital assets, and private banks are definitely no longer ignoring them. They're integrating a disciplined 5 to 10% allocation, a specific crypto bucket, if you will, managed right alongside 90% traditional assets. But storing that 10%, that requires an entirely new kind of vault.
Enter the closed architecture framework of the new Swiss vault, which rests on these 6 pillars. Those thick steel doors we talked about, they're replaced by institutional custody with multi-signature safeguards. Security guards are replaced by automated compliance protocols. You also have prudent allocation, insurance against hacks, digital family governance, and a huge focus on sustainability by prioritizing energy-efficient protocols. And this brilliantly illustrates the core philosophy behind modern digital banking. Wealth is not just money, it is continuity. The true purpose of this digital vault isn't just to hoard Bitcoin, it's to ensure the generational transfer and sustainable stewardship of wealth. It's about ensuring these digital assets can be safely inherited by the next generation, governed by the exact same trust built by traditional Swiss banks.
And finally, part 5, the future of trust.
As you've seen today, the fundamental nature of what we consider a critical asset has completely transformed over the last century. Yet the underlying architecture of trust, that defense in depth, the redundancy, and the governance, that remains absolutely constant. Tying this whole evolutionary journey together, back in the 1920s with the Federal Reserve, we built physical fortresses out of stone and bedrock. By 2008, with the Svalbard Seed Vault, we learned to harness natural shields like permafrost and tunnels. And moving toward 2026 and beyond, our vaults are constructed from invisible code, smart contracts, and algorithms.
So I'll leave you with this final, provocative thought to ponder. We've protected our economies with gold, our biology with seeds, and our future wealth with digital codes. If trust is the ultimate vault, what invisible, vital asset will humanity need to lock away next? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.